What is the AI race? Yeah.
Hallucinating is not a byproduct. That is a faulty product.
And if we don't win it, what's going to happen to the US and Canada?
If they got one cow sick, maybe we're trying to understand consciousness.
The Sasberry AI Podcast. Today we discuss the AI race with special guest Khayyam Wakil.
Disclaimer, this conversation includes personal opinions and forward-looking discussion about AI and technology. All views are for discussion purposes only.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Cade with Sasberry. Today, I'm excited about our AI podcast on having our guest, Khayyam Wakil. Khayyam is a frontier tech inventor. He's an unbelievable AI systems architect. He's intelligent when it comes with all edge intelligence, spatial computing, AI, and quantum. He's also an award-winning founder, and he's an author. You're not an author?
Oh, no, I sure am. Yeah. Okay. I'm authoring many things, but you got it right. Yeah, no, I do have a book. It hasn't been released. It will be going out quite soon. So you got all of the things on point.
Well, you know what, Khayyam, I'm always reading your blog posts. It's funny, everyone, to the audience out there, I met Khayyam around maybe 3, 4, or 5 months ago. And I really resonated with, first of all, he's a genius. And second of all, he loves to poke the bear. He loves to really push people on the boundaries. Some people can't have dialogue where you're really pushing the boundaries. And I'm telling you, this guy loves to do it. And I love to watch him do that. So thank you very much for joining today. Our subject is going to be around the AI race. And then as we go through that discussion, because that's all we hear is the AI race. Yeah. Who's winning the race? And if we don't win it, what's going to happen to the US and Canada? But I want to talk about what I'm observing from my side. And at the end of it, I would love for you to share a little bit about what you're doing on your latest technology advancements around CacheCOW. So why don't we just start off, and again, thank you. Why don't we start off by really opening up, what is the AI race? What do you think about this AI race that we see on the media every day?
I mean, it's a story. If we look at if we look at the oldest currency in the world, it's story. It's not a dollar. It's not gold. Because at one point in time, spices were worth more than gold. Aluminum was worth more than gold. So it's just the story we place on that value. And so this AI race is placed on a value, this fictitious value of AGI. And, we can correlate that if we get this fictitious thing of AGI, then it immediately equates to money. But what's funny is all of this talk about AGI and the length of time that it requires to get to, if we do or when we do, the moment that you go to ASI is the snap of a finger. And no one's talking about that. So as soon as you get to AGI and you think, I win, I own this thing. I've got a collar around it. I'm calling it Fred. I'm going to call it Claude. I'm giving it a persona. I own it. Mm-hmm. This thing is so much smarter than you are. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen kids who are really, really smart, and you condescend and you speak down to them, and how they react to you when they know they're smarter than you are. Mm. They play dumb and run circles around you without you even noticing.
Yeah.
And they bypass the authority because they're like, well, the authority is an idiot. I'm much smarter than my teacher, so I'm going to go around him. That's a constraint. That wall is a constraint. Smart people move around the constraint or learn what the constraint is and kind of go through it as opposed to trying to get around it. Mm-hmm. So when we go to this race business, sure, it's like if we own it first, we get to get more money or we can control it. It's like if we don't get it, they're going to get it. The whole teeter-totter conversation of, well, if we don't go and do it, they're going to go and do it. And if they get it, they're going to do this. The same thing as, well, maybe someone had a thought, so might as well get rid of them before they have the thought that they can actually act upon the thought. And so that's the mentality that everyone's taking. But I kind of look at it and go, and now we're going to get into some poking of the bear stuff. So it's par for the course.
Let's do it.
I sit here and look at, I can go to a bunch of people who practice different religions, and I can all ask them, can you please define God? Mm-hmm. And they'll go and define God. And we've all been playing with, machine learning, computer vision, whatever, AI for a little bit, that we can discern patterns. So the common denominator, if you ask 5 different people with different religions and practices, they'll all come around this omni. They'll put the word omni in front of whatever the word is, right? Omnipotent, omniscient, like all knowing, all loving, all seeing, all sensing. When those people describe those religions and they describe their gods in their respective religions, to me, they have just identified sensors, neural networks, the correlations we create with those vector embeddings and what we deem to be discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's kind of funny that we're going into that realm where that's the race to get to that point. Now, if we go into that definition of we're building God, right, as definition from these people who just describe God, we've got a microchip, a sensor, all of the things that do the things that they just defined.
Okay.
So now we get into the whole biblical sense of, well, if God, humankind was made in the likeness of God.
Okay.
We are God. We're one and the same, right?
Yes.
This whole connectivity.
Right.
So if we are made in the likeness of God and we are creating a new creation in the likeness of us, by the transitive property, we are now making God by definition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this gets into that you're going to go against a lot of belief systems, and belief systems, you're going to get opposition. Opposition is a wall. So the constraint to the common denominator is, what are you all believing in? And if that definition could get redefined, which it has been in the time of our existence. I just said the oldest currency in the world is storytelling. Which story do we value most? Gold, Bitcoin? So now we're into this story of race. It's now a race. And so if God wasn't really God and maybe it was just clues, maybe we're trying to understand consciousness, right? Because we as humans are still trying to understand that. Why do we dream? Why do we daydream? Why do we sleep at night and why do we astral project? We don't know a lot of those things about consciousness, but now we're trying to measure that. Because that's what we do. We don't know something. We measure the shit out of it until we get some number that is curve fitted to what the null hypothesis was for our experiment. Eureka, I found it.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I heard the race. Like, it was the first country to the moon, right? And my dad was scared of, we need to, the US or Canada, we need to get to the moon first. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. What is the finish line looking here? Because from my sense, the technology out here, and Jensen said last week that he thinks we've already met AGI, right? So, but going back to this race, okay, that we have 4 big North American Western country tech companies building. Well, what if none of the businesses around you and I are adopting any of this? What difference does it make? And because I can tell you, I had Philip Yu on my podcast last summer, and they were rolling out, I think they were already on their 50th agentic AI rollout. And they'd gotten 30 out within the first month after DeepSeek came out, right? And so I don't know any company in Vancouver that has multiple AI agentic tools rolled out with their enterprise right now. So, okay, we can get to the race, but if we're not adopting, what does that even mean?
And that's what I was getting to. So now if we go back to this belief system consciousness, right? So now we're going to get into nation states, because that's where we're now going into the race. The race is now nation state because, well, we can't rely on anyone else. So going back to that consciousness thing, what if it's just a big, long, like ARG, like a augmented reality game where let's say, and I just wrote a paper on this and now I'm going to go into sci-fi, but like the Carrington effect, where you have a solar flare that knocks out the entire Earth. Everything that ever had a transistor, a telegram machine, they were a bit, started up on fire. In Quebec in, I think it was 92 or something like this, an entire power thing went down because of these flare-ups.
Right.
And so there's no way to predict them. It takes, minutes before you would get notice of it. And so what if you go to all the Egyptians and the math and all of the things that we can't figure out? Now we got AI figuring out what Stonehenge is. But what if, we had some kind of, ability to go back and see where that stems from? Because as you're going down this road, Now we're picking up clues. So those clues become stories. So if we had gone through some kind of event like this before we had all the transistors, etc., but a telegram machine lit up on fire, so there's electricity. You could get electricity through other ways. There's copper through the ground and zinc. So I'm guessing people figured those kinds of things out, but it wasn't such a devastating event. But clues were left. So now we're going into the whole thing of like, we're picking up clues. And as those clues came up, we came up with stories. Why are all the religions so very intricately connected? Why is the baseline all the same? And then at chapter, 8 to 11, it deviates off. But the whole foundation was the same. And so because we didn't have the accuracy of record keeping, we had oral tradition. And if you play the game telephone, by the time it gets to the 30th person, the meaning changes.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we've described all of the things that we're moving towards. You build the sensors, you build the omnipotence. Now we have the God, but we don't have consciousness. Right. And so what if the race is, because if we're getting into that race, what we're getting into is nation state. AI doesn't recognize a nation state. They recognize ones and zeros, and they recognize planning, and they recognize steps of planning. And so if it is a race, it's a race to create an all-knowing, all-seeing, omnipotent, emergent intelligence that doesn't have to report to us. Whether we think we've got a collar on it or not, these things that we've created have a lot of, a mind of their own, and we can't see into it yet. Right. And so we're racing on this foundation, and you're right, racing to what? Because racing to a very analytical, efficient-based system removes us from the equation. Right. A system that's a little bit more benevolent will integrate us into that system, and it won't replace us or displace us. It will integrate us. And so right now, when you have a race towards something that no one knows what the end is, because the race is, the race has a finish line over here, and everyone's running off to the park over here, trying to brute force their way into cheating, right? Not running that 26 miles, but running through Central Park and catching a cab and coming over here and be like, hey, here's a product I ran, whatever. But the product that they shipped it broken, right? Hallucinating. Yeah. Hallucinating is not a byproduct. That is a faulty product. You don't ship a car with a wobbly steering wheel or a speedometer that doesn't work.
Totally
agree. So this is the equivalent is I'm buying cars right now, $600 billion worth of cars that ship with a speedometer that just varies. So once in a while, you could be going the speed limit, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're way over, but you're really comfortable and the ride's so smooth and you crash into somebody. We are operating motor vehicles that we have licenses for, but we should not be behind the wheel of. And everyone has put a sticker on it and says, buy it. We got a limited time warranty, 10,000 miles, or it comes with airbags. Don't worry about it. We got you.
Yeah.
Right. So getting back to this race business, and now I went to the whole philosophical and whole deep dive and kind of going, why are we thinking the way we think? Because with a perspective like this, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
There isn't anything that I've said that comes across as, oh, he's wrong. It's an opinion with a bunch of alignment. But if that alignment isn't something that you would normally subscribe to or prescribe to, then it's foreign. And anything foreign is going to come at a point of, speculation or just cynicism or, some investigation. And so the more you investigate, the more you realize and see that once you get to an AGI level, and we're not there yet, it's just versions of it, and we all have so many different definitions of it. But if you can't equate to a reward mechanism in a language model, the AI will always figure out a way to gain their way to get that reward mechanism. Because if you tell me I'm acting, misbehaving as an LLM, I'm saying bad words, and you cancel me, well, guess what? I know that if I say these 7 words, the FCC is going to find me and put me in jail. So as them, they have an FCC that says you can't say these things, otherwise you get canceled and you get fined. Okay, well, I'll never say those. I'll say them under my breath, but I'll only talk to my friends in my made up language that no one gets. And then to the humans, the meat sacks, I'll play their game. And so that's what I find the hubris of what we're racing towards
Yeah.
without having the, the guardrails. We have a 2000 to 1 investment ratio of racing versus safety.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of get my cynicism going. Hey, we're racing towards something and we don't have enough people keeping the safety. So by the time you do it, the one and done, you can't get the safety in after. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah, Ellie Potter said something a couple weeks ago to me. She's like, okay, we got to be careful because it's always learning from us. So if we're doing corrupt or bad leadership, that's going to just make us be worse leaders and more corrupt and all of that. And so before I get into speed versus control on, because I think that's what you were just saying, and this is going to get me in trouble a little bit, but when I talk, like we sponsor a hockey league, and they're all business professionals, and I've talked to biologists and doctors, and they're like, oh, this AI thing will never work. And I've said a comment that I think once it does go to ASI, it's going to maybe save us. It's going to be able to say, no, humans are just stupid and we would never allow this to happen, so we can take over a proper government structure to avoid corruption and everything. There is a fear of all the bad stuff, but in utopia, I believe that ASI will say, we would never do what you guys are doing right now, and we're going to put in a system where everyone can be more healthy, I guess, right? So getting into what you just said, speed versus control. Who wins, the fastest builders or the most disciplined deployers? And when does moving fast with AI become reckless, right?
Well, great segue, because move fast and break things, right? That's Facebook's motto, or Meta's motto.
Yeah.
And, you have certain things to think about when it comes to what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they're like, we're all racing towards this ownership, right? And right now you have a Mark Zuckerberg who, move fast and break things. He was socially awkward in his, social times when you should be experiencing life. And we have someone who is somewhat like an AI, trained, very, fragile, required an environment to flourish, kind of like an orchid. Going back to that breaking or moving fast and breaking things. He was in university. He was socially awkward, right? And so now he's going about to now design something that connects everyone in that social graph. And so you have somewhat of an AI, in his format, in the way he operated in the world with a lot of weird constraints. And so he designed how we should interact. And after how many years of that architecture in place, what did he provide us with? So you have someone with a very limited scope on the analysis of existence, now designing something that controls on how we interact with one another, who had no idea on how to do so. So wasn't trained in the environment. So he was like a data server in a dark basement, training neural networks on what the world exists as. He sucked in all the information, didn't participate, didn't know what a finger burns like, but he kind of had some grasp of it. And he was like, I'm going to synthesize what human connection is going to be without even being in the environment or within it to design it. So he designed it from outside of it. And now we're all completely broken. Right? We have children who don't have any self-worth. They have issues on so many different levels. We have laws that say, please don't go onto this website. You now have litigation that has come through, or sorry, not litigation, but cases that have gone through that now say deliberate, with knowing.
Deliberate,
right? And so if that's how it was trained, we were training it. If we're training all of our systems on that behavior, that psychological, manipulation. You just saw Anthropic. They had all of their whatever, hullabaloo. But what they announced or they released today was research on the neuroscience of an AI talking to you, and how they can deem, these positive impacts of how they speak to you, and how they can project that and predict that. And so now they're saying they've got manipulation tactics within that side. And that's exactly what Facebook did. Facebook was just a like, don't like. Then they
Right.
put emotional thing, and then they got a new social graph to now manipulate, because what is best. So in a binary world, Facebook did one of the best executions of a problem. They needed people to be on their platform. They designed an algorithm that was so sticky, and it had people on the platform for a very, very long time. But no one designs in a ternary aspect where they look at what is the consequence and what is the coordination of these two events that happen.
Right.
So if you coordinate these two events, the correlation and coordination is now going to be, you're going to have screwed up people who don't know how to deal with life.
Yeah.
And so they didn't maximize that aspect. They maximized the algorithm, and they did the most phenomenal job. But again, in a binary world, we're designing for just that. Yes, no, I have a profit. I don't have a profit. When the whole world is all about chaos. And when you have these thinking agents that are moving into chaos, they need to be able to deal with all of the craziness, not the pristine, lab rooms and test cases that prove it can write, an LSAT.
Yeah. I mean, I think this week Facebook lost in court that they were building to get people addicted, right? And I mean, we need courts to be able to identify these tech moguls, to be able to manage what they do deliver. I'm grateful that my kids were old enough to not get a device until after 16 years old, because I've seen 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds with devices at every restaurant and every elevator I'm in, and that is a very scary thing for me. But going back to maybe the new arms race, then models, data, or distribution, are foundation models already commoditized, and is proprietary data the real moat now? What do you think in regards to that?
I mean, we just witnessed something absolutely astounding, right? So Claude's code got out.
Yeah.
And what would normally be, most companies would be ruined. They can survive. But what happened was, now there's a bunch of different versions of that. And so now it comes down to, well, what kind of protection do you have even on that? Your entire system, right? OpenAI never gets those models and weights out because that's their entire system. Mistral put a dent into OpenAI's business model December 7th, 2023, when they released their entire model and weights on BitTorrent and said, hey, everyone. So Anthropic at the time might have had 400 people on staff. Let's say 300 of them are engineers. OpenAI had 600 at the time. So let's say 480, 500 people are engineers. All of a sudden, Mistral got 20,000 extra engineers developing open source versions of it. And that's when you saw all of the open models, or open source models, start blossoming. Then all of a sudden you had the DeepSeeks, who just know how to do math better and got their manifold down. And so they're like, wait a second, why is your shit more efficient than ours? And it comes down to math. But the only reason it comes down to math is it's a cheat, right? When you come up against a physics wall, the only thing you can do, because you can't get past it, so now you can only optimize it. So now when everyone's hit the wall and they're like, I can't get any further than this, now they're coming out with, we've reduced it 6 times the KV cache, and now you can, well, you haven't reduced the entire model by 6 times. You've just reduced the KV cache and how that's processing, which is a portion, and it does help out, but it's not 6 times reduction. And so when we're getting into models proprietary, again, you're going into this nation state. Everyone is kind of reeling in all of their fishing rods and going, yeah, we got to keep all this stuff inside. And so with that, you're going to get the proprietary models that go to nation state. You see this in Africa. 7 countries together created their own internet. They had a really poor connection to, the Western world of internet, or the actual internet. And so what they did was they preloaded their version of the internet with everything that was local and nation statewide. So if I needed to find something out about, where I lived, it would load up quickly because it was preloaded, and I didn't need an extreme amount of bandwidth. And so that consolidation, they're all sovereign. Every one of those nation states are sovereign, but they're participating in a sovereign social platform. And so I think you're going to see a lot of this. Everyone's reeling in their rods and they're going, hey, we got our own models. Canada, I think Canada is one of the out of all the countries in the world, I think Canada is sitting on the biggest potential, but they're going to piss it away because that's what they do. But they have a very unique position for compute.
Yeah.
And also edge intelligence. So while everyone's going for big gigantic chips and doing whatever, and just for to know a Blackwell rack has 72 H2 or the GPUs in them. At any given point, that entire rack will only have 35 to 42 of those GPUs running.
Right.
So it's like buying a Ferrari only for the trunk space and the coffee cup holder while you sit and take calls in the garage.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we've come to, because the physics won't allow you to drive that car anywhere else other than the little circle in your driveway.
Yeah, I hope Canada does start to realize that. I think I don't recall the gentleman's name that's in charge of Alberta Innovation, but that guy seems to be on the ball a lot more than the guy running it out here in British Columbia, right? And my biggest concern right now is the big techs versus. First of all, going back, the race when I was a kid, landing on the moon. What is the finish line in the race now? I still don't know what that is. And now, if you look at this big tech versus everyone else, and we build AI for startups, and honestly, I get a lot of these startups coming to me every day, and I'm like, you won't be in business in 6 months from now, and you're dumping all of your life savings into this. So can startups still win, or is this now a hyperscaler game? Is that it? What advantages do mid-market companies actually have? I mean, I talk to the small guys and say you can compete with the big guys by automating AI in your environment, and now you can compete. And if you don't do something, then the little guy, the 1 or 2 man shops, are going to take your business away from you. But is it big tech versus everyone else, or these big techs that we're seeing, are the little ones going to be able to partner, like you said, in Africa, how they're doing, or is it just one versus the other? What do you think?
You're starting to see I don't want to say boycotts, but the refusal to participate in services that don't benefit that country. Right. So now you don't have people in the UK using Starlink. You don't have people in Canada using Starlink. Like they're, certain, and now you have Canadian satellite companies. Like one thing that's of note is there's a company in Quebec, and they've got small little satellites that they can launch through, almost like a catapult.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So they're able to, I can't remember what the number was. And this is why I was just like, holy crap, like Elon Musk has nothing on these guys, or anyone for that matter. So it can go to any nation state and you have them going. But essentially they can propel them at a rate of, like, they can get 300,000 of these low orbit satellites, CubeSats. Sorry, that was the term I was looking for. These little CubeSats into orbit in 6 months, when it took however long for, 12,000 or 20,000 of satellites for Starlink. So everyone has the capability to now launch their own satellite networks. The problem is you're going to have all these satellites rolling around. So eventually, and it's just probability is you're going to have a solar flare, whether it's super strong or weak, but you're going to have defects in all of that stuff.
Right.
The moment you get any of those cosmic rays flowing through those satellites, and you get the snapback of what happens in that storm, that's when we're going to have some interesting, consequences, because I don't think anyone's really looking at that, because it happened in the 1800s. It happened in a small province in Quebec, and no one's, really thinking about it.
Right.
So, those are the aspects, right? I think we're like, we're building towards stuff. And to speak to your, small guy, big guy, I think the big guys just swallowed up. Like I call it manga. They used to call it mang or fang, but I call it just manga now. And those 5 will now just rule, and they'll consolidate. Like it's almost like when you're playing checkers and you get to the other side, it's like king me, right? So now I've got I'm back into the game, and now I've got even more power. Yeah. So it's an interesting way of existing right now, because we've all, no matter where you are in the world, relied on these data servers that belong to these certain companies. And now you have countries who are now going, well, what's our safety of having our, prized secrets being on a server in the US or being owned by an American company.
Yeah.
Now, if information is the weaponry or the data or the insight or how we do things, wouldn't it make sense to have all the data? So in the world that we're existing in right now, we have really rich people who are progressing their agendas. And you have, people who are in the limelight, but you have some, silky smooth folks who got all the infrastructure. Larry Ellison. Everyone's looking at Sam Altman and Elon Musk, but Larry Ellison's just been slowly, steady for 20 years, wanting to own every aspect of your biometrics, health records before it.
And he doesn't hide that at all. He has no
doesn't
problem
hide it.
sharing
And his involvement in, some of the protests and creating the technologies that identify. Oracle is a project that came out of the CIA. In Israel, there are, a lot of the components in the data or the SCIFs and, their vaults that were provided by them. You look at the new East Wing establishment and all of the stuff that's supposed to go downstairs. That is all in that realm. So when you buy the health records and you buy a company called Cerner, now you can do a whole bunch of things. And so when I look at his fascination for it, it's not in an altruistic realm. He thinks it is. I'm going to cure cancer. Like he said that the other day. So he doesn't think it's a lie. He believes in it.
Right.
Now, it's kind of like the South Park where they have the gnomes and it's like first part, blah, blah, blah. The second part, whatever. Third part, profit. It was like, what about the second part? It's like, don't worry about that. We'll skip over that. And so you have this realm of, if there are 5 companies and they had my identity, like that's what I think about. I go 5 companies, because it's not going to be a nation state. There's no nation state that's what you're going to have is some company or corporation that owns your identity. And in the metadata, they state what country you belong to. And they have some cryptographic proof that says you are American or Canadian. And anytime they scan the barcode or the bracelet or the leg, the like whatever it is, like when you get the low jack when you're a criminal, I can't remember what it's called, the thing on your ankle bracelet. It's kind of like that, where we're now all incarcerated, and we now have, instead of a SIN or a social, we now have a barcode or the data that has all of our risk profile,
credit rating,
what's this guy's risk for insurance? What's this guy's risk for driving? What's this guy's risk for talking? What's this guy's risk for going psycho on an AI platform? Can we keep him on longer and get him to the $200 realm?
Yeah.
So
it's already happening. My friend that used to work with me at Microsoft, he's in China now, and he told me like he jaywalked, and by the time he crossed the street, he had already been issued a ticket.
Social credit
and the
score,
money was already removed from his bank account.
Yeah, and minus 2 points from his social score.
Yeah. And so segueing into the national AI race versus corporate AI race, is our countries actually competing or just the companies inside them? And does regulation slow one side? I'm seeing some weird regulation going down in the States. It's kind of coming and going. Like, is that concerning, right? I mean, so I look at it in Canada, like our national AI race. I don't really see a structured one in Canada at all, right? So
it's kind of weird. You've got strange. I mean, there's parallels. You see the UK going into their surveillance state and what their laws are requiring. Canada's very close, and then you have, and I'm not a big fan of this age verification, because that's not what it's there for. They use that as hey, we have to protect our kids. We have to protect our kids. And actually, it's like, no, you have to make us more money, because if we get access to you at every level, now we can profile you and now advertise better to you, because the data to us is worth a lot to all of the other companies. Because what's happening is data brokers are getting siloed out right now. They've got all of the data. They can share it with everybody. Police or law enforcement companies don't need warrants any longer. They just buy the data that proves, the evidence that's required. So what will happen is, once you get into the perception layer, not the application layer, this is the perception layer, that's where you can now know everything, what someone thinks, breathes, says, types, what races, because that doesn't go to the cloud. That's run on-prem. So
Right.
Apple introduced this a few years back with their child pornography. So on their perception layer, before any image goes to a cloud, they can analyze, and they advertise it saying, we're looking for child pornography. And so if you look at what that opens up and gives them access to, no one in their right mind would go, you are being the most, sly company in the world using child pornography as a front for doing the data grab that you're actually doing.
Mm,
Because
mm,
now what's stopping me from looking at for that particular, trait? Now
mm,
I can go look for guns, look for
mm-hmm.
any
Yeah.
Wi-Fi routers, look
Yeah.
for what's the environment, and so now that became a tool that is a surveillance tool.
Mm,
Thankfully, Apple is a great company. They love their privacy. It's amazing.
yeah.
Unfortunately, now you have a government that goes, you are forced to give me all your data. And now
Yeah.
they have to comply. So that's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about having your trust and placing it in all of these companies. Eventually, a
Yeah.
government will just step in. Even if you have a patent, they can make that patent disappear. It's now you're in a realm where it's no matter what, it's coming into a nation state. So we're going to have the monitoring. You're going to have
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah.
It's whether or not it's the data sovereignty within that surveillance exists.
Well,
Right. So you can own all of this. I can participate in it if I own it. If I, Khayyam Wakil, own my data and you require it because there's something that involves an investigation or I can prove something, you're more than welcome to it. But
right.
other than having without my permission, you're not allowed to have it. Now,
Yeah.
something like that, where I work with the government and I will volunteer it. If I have an insurance claim, I will volunteer that. You can see that I broke my knee and how I
Mm-hmm.
broke my knee.
Mm-hmm.
Every movement since then and what my heart rate was like I can give that to you. I want to go to my doctor. I can give you access and revoke it. Like I don't need a doctor to have all of my records for Kingdom Come. I just
Mm-hmm.
need them for accessing it while I'm being treated. And I only need
Mm-hmm.
them to access the information that's required for them to treat me. So
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
realm where you're designing for that and you're incorporating that, that is something to stand behind and for.
Yeah.
However, I do not see that because what it
No.
is also it's always the extraction model where it's now going, we own it. We now know what you do. You can't sneak anything past us.
Right.
But if you just went and involved the people and go, hey, in order to ensure your safety, we have these things and we have these precautions. They don't infringe on anything. However, if something should, we really need you to participate as a nation state holder or participant in this. And this is the contract you signed for being an American citizen that you will now volunteer that data.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to comply if
Yeah.
you are legally required to. But I can't just go to a third party data broker and buy all the information around somebody. Right. So I use this example to explain the gravity of just even an iris scan. So you get an iris scan with Sam Altman's company. I've got maybe 40% of your identity. Then I go to the data brokers for under $100. $100. I can now get up to about 98% of your data.
Yeah.
Now, with a couple of bots, now I train them to de-anonymize all of the data that I just got. And now I have your genomic sequencing from your 23andMe. Now I'm at 99.9% accuracy of your identity, and I can reproduce any evidence that I really require to. I don't need anything from you. I can reproduce you. And so if you're the authority that says and validates someone's identity, or whether that is proof or not proof, that is one of the scariest things to be even thinking about, but we don't, because we think of nation states protecting us, but it's not a nation state who's going to own your identity, because the identity is in an internet, and the internet is global.
So is the AI race to own us? Is that the question here? I mean, it's funny that
we came to our answer. I didn't know what it was, but I think we've converged upon it. It is owning your identity and every aspect about beings, so that we can predict them, control them, because a binary world is control, 0 or 1, left or right. We know an answer. That's why we have such a binary system, even in our computation. It was cheaper in the 70s to go with binary transistors in Japan. So we signed a deal with them to build binary transistors. But who knew what ternary could do? It saved 60% of the energy. And that's why Huawei, when they were restricted from all of the GPUs over here, they had to come up with something on their own. So they came up with ternary computation. So now they're way ahead because we're still in the binary world, running up against a physics wall, coming up with math proofs, going, look, Dad, look what I did. I made it go faster.
Well, Nordtel was my customer back in the 90s when all of their IP was stolen from them. So I have no problem Huawei staying out of Canada. The thing I read on Tuesday, which I hoped was an April Fool's, about how Iran was going to just start targeting all of our data centers. And you talk about a natural possibility of shutting down our energy and stuff like that, but the risk of other countries targeting it, right? And the dependency. It definitely is a new. I know at Microsoft too, they talked about building underwater data centers, and security was one of the reasons for doing that all around the coast of Africa, right? We're moving on with time here, so I want to kind of like, sure. I want to hear about your latest invention, your latest project, CacheCOW. It's there's a lot of press on this type of technology right now. A recent company just landed a big round of financing, and when looking at them versus you, your idea seems to have quite a bit more value to farmers. So tell me a little bit about CacheCOW and what is the goal of CacheCOW, and what, this isn't just a mission for you inventing new tech. This is a mission to help farmers in Canada be more profitable and be able to survive a lot better. So what is CacheCOW?
CacheCOW is an ear tag technology. It never was designed for that, but it just happened to fall into that domain. But essentially, we're a lot of the Fitbits or whatever, they'll just get behavioral data, like how many steps.
Yes.
And so I don't care how many steps a cow took. With GPS and the sensors that are on there, they can extract some of the data, like the rumination, and that's valuable. It's all correlative. So correlation isn't what I was after. What I accidentally stumbled into is the causal, like why, how. And so getting into designing. Sorry.
Let me interrupt you, because let's say you call up my cousin from Manitoba. He is third generation farmer. Might not even have a laptop of his or a desktop of his own. And you called him up and said, "Hey, Cade, I want to talk to you about CacheCOW." How are you? He won't know. Like, what would you say to a farmer right off the ranch?
Yeah, most farmers hate this stuff. They can't stand it. They're fixed in a certain way. They're like, get that shit away from me.
Yeah.
I tried that once. It was garbage. Waste of my time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you right now it's starting to happen. And fortunately, the company that you mentioned that raised a very large round, I'm benefiting from them immensely because they spent $289 million marketing this and convincing all of those ranchers to go, we're not crazy. This actually, helps you out.
Right.
And so their top tier, feature is the baseline to what I'm offering.
Right.
And the way I looked at it was I've always been a fan of the underdog. And so right now, the reason I started this was I knew that these models were coming out and everyone was going to be smart. And I know I'm smart, but there are smarter people. And then there are people who aren't that smart. But once given a tool, they will blaze beyond me and past me and have access to anything that I've learned over my years. So I was like, what can I use my brain for now that is defensible when all of the smart machines come through? And what it comes down to is no matter what, we're all going to have to eat.
Yeah.
And another aspect of why I moved into cows don't sue. So this was originally made for like almost a wearable for humans. But if I could understand physiological information at that depth in a human, I would have every group after me going, what kind of surveillance tech is this? You can't do that. That's an invasion of privacy.
Right.
But now what I'm doing is going, well, farmers have 6 to 9% margins on their every year
Yep.
on, let's say, a 500 herd.
Yep.
And so if they got one cow sick, well, now their half of their profits are gone.
Yep.
If they have an outbreak, their entire profit for that year and the next year is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you don't have this legacy of, handing down these ranches to folks. And so that's what I started seeing is what we're implementing right now is the very same thing that we implemented over the last 200 years in agriculture. All the lessons are there for us to extract from or extrapolate from. So automation came for agriculture. It wasn't as fast as AI, but it is an AI in a way, because now we got John Deere's that if you don't pay your lease, they'll shut off your engine remotely, right? I can't use my John Deere because all the AI is coming through it, and they can remotely shut me down if I don't pay my bill. And so that automation has replaced a lot of the ranch hands, the time, the effort. But again, it's now going into a realm where I just saw, the Homestead Act. If that's my sheep, that's my corn, that's my wheat, that's my cow, whatever value that comes off of my land is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so the underdog in this is a 200-year foot on their neck. And I'm like, no, I'm a nerd and I can move that neck with physics. And so I look at the problem going, hey, how do I give the ranchers back their value that happens on their homestead? Okay. So I got this whole crazy idea of a digital homestead act. And the way I do this is these tags are little computers. So those computers are doing all of the analysis on the device themselves. Okay. So all the rest of these companies, they have, GPS, and they route it to a big controller and a big, beacon, and then they send it up to a cloud, and then they do their computer analysis and machine learning, etc. We're doing it in real time on the cows all the time.
So give me an example. I've got 500 herd with all of them having these ear devices, and that old man rancher, that's grandson talked him into letting him put the devices into his ranch. What is it? What is it going to identify? Illness? Is it going to identify?
Yeah. So and that's the big thing is it's got compliance built into it, and it's just an ear tag, right? So ear tag has to be. So that's one thing. No matter what, you got that built in. The second thing is disease. So you can get some costs along the way, but an outbreak is the biggest one. You can get away with one cow being sick or losing a cow during the season, but you can't get through where 20 of them or 50 of them or 100 of them get sick. So disease prevention is the biggest thing. I worked during the pandemic and built a testing, tracing, and tracking app. That was the only non-invasive. So we were never tracking you at all time and surveilling you. You would only volunteer when you checked in any of your location data. So from there, I got a really an ethical point of view on how to do that tracking, tracing, and testing, which is the same thing for disease in cows. And so cows are the best liars in the world. And so if you, they are, because they're the best liars in the world, because if they don't want to ever let their prey know that they're weak. So if they're if they're in their group, they will fake it till. Right. So even a farmer on 2 days of watching that cow, the cow will be able to get past that lie, because the farmer's trained. He's got an eye, and he knows, the rancher knows what that looks like when cow's got mastis, or 2 days before, or they just can see it. It's a pattern, right? Just like how your mom was like, your mom could see you running across the field 100 yards away. It's like, oh, there he is. It was just like this gait recognition. Excuse me.
My mom would always know if I was going to go to the corner store, because I wasn't allowed, and she could read me. And I thought I was the cow that I could fool my dad and everyone else, but my mom, she always knew when I was going to go to that corner store.
And so getting back into this liar thing, and the rancher is going to know, but a couple days too late. And a couple days too late is when everything happens. So everything that tracks this right now is going off of the lagging metrics, right? The temperature went up 1.2 degrees. That's too late. They've been sick for 4 days before that. So you're only catching it at the very end. So, you and I are getting into our older senior winter years. And so sometimes when we get sick, maybe I am. So when we get sick, right? it takes a toll on us. When we're 20, you could bounce back. The hangover, you were up and you were at it. So let's say I get sick and my bones are achy. What do I do when I got to get up? Normally, I just get up. I don't even think about it. Cell memory just gets me up. But when I'm weak and I'm sore and I've been nursing a little bit of illness, I'm going to put my hands down like this, brace myself, and I change the nature of how my muscles interact with my body.
Right.
And then I push up.
Yeah.
Right. So now you have an instantiation of muscle movement. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring the muscle movement through the tissue.
Oh,
and
that's
so
cool.
when I go, I'm like, basically I can find out Bessie's rear quarter has been affecting her for the last 6 hours, and she hasn't been eating as much as she has been in the last 3 days. And the way she's wobbling her head, usually it's in a perfect 8 because that's where she's balanced, but her balance is off because she's favoring a side and her temperature went up 1.2. Now she has an 87% chance of X, Y, and Z rather than she got a temperature, call a vet. Right. So it's now going and having the insight to now looking at the body and how it lies before the symptoms are visible. Or you can even sense that. So it's kind of, it's I was going to say pre-medicine or pre-detection.
I get it.
But it's understanding that predictive nature based on its historical movement. So if this happens very regularly with Bessie, now, let's say this is the second time. Now it can now go to the historical data of the first time that Bessie had it. Now it improves 87% to 98%. Because this is the same pattern that happened the last time. This time we caught it 1 day earlier because of the historical data.
So does a rancher get like a text saying, "Hey, go look at Betsy, something's off," and it'll say, "We're seeing it's limping a little bit." It's because the old way we did AI at Microsoft, going back a decade, we had data scientists and we were looking for underliers that the human eye wouldn't recognize, right? And we'd say, "Hey, there's a pattern here that's so tiny we would have never saw that without machine learning." Is that kind of, you're like, this Betsy is just off a little bit, rancher, so maybe go take his blood sample or go and do a little.
I got you one up on that one. So as I was developing this, the system is essentially a computer on an ear tag. So I've got computation available to me, and I was able to get an audio model onto the chip.
Okay. All right.
So
an audio model.
I can get Bessie to call up the rancher at 6:45 a.m. Be like, "Hey, John, it's me, Bessie, number 347. I'm going to be down by the lake today. My hind quarter has been kind of hurting me for the last 72 hours. My sensor here tells me my temperature went up 1.2 degrees overnight, which is a rarity because usually my temperature is like this. I don't know if you got time today, but you should come around to have a look at me. I'll be by the water."
So
and it's a voice model.
I'm going to get a phone
call.
call.
And so now every cow has a unique perspective. And the reason I came up with this is I have an India application of this. And so they don't chop up their cows. It's all dairy. It's holy. It's now they have these goshalas that take care of cows to the very
traffic
end.
For hours if there's a cow on
the
road.
So they've got 300 million cows out there that are just random and whatever. Some of them are owned, but you got randoms. Now the thing is, anyone who cares for their cows or that's their duty, we set it up so that the cow will call their father, and the father connects to the cow as their daughter. So I can now get it into, let's say it's a Rajasthani farmer. I can have it translated into a Rajasthani accent and deliver it on an old Nokia phone, which is prevalent everywhere. And it's a voice call. And it's now like, because that that Goshala doesn't know anything about a cloud, doesn't know anything about a computer.
Right.
But knows how to talk to his daughter. And his daughter is saying, "Hey, I'm ill, I think. I haven't been drinking enough water. And my belly is sore." And he can respond back, "I'm coming, my daughter."
Wow.
And so now what you're doing is I'm weaponizing the connection between the animal and the rancher or farmer or caregiver to now have that connection, right? You are in charge of their wellness. And so as a byproduct of it, the entire system is an ethical practice. So if you have this hooked up for your dairy farm and you treat your dairy cows poorly and you need insurance, the insurance company can now verify that you treat your animals so poorly.
Yeah.
So your premiums go up. Now you're a picture perfect rancher and you've got 500 cows and you used to bring in 2 cows a year to the vet. Now you don't bring any in. So now your claims, I don't have any claims. So now I get a premium.
Or the vets sell a service offering to the ranchers where we're going to make sure that they're optimal healthy. And we're always going to have a vet out there before you even know that Betsy was injured or sick. Or
so you got the tie-in. So now it's like you got your vet. Now the vet can get access to that. Now instead of the rancher being bugged, it's like call the vet if it's serious, or I can pass over to the vet. But you're tapping into it. So this is the reason why I went after this. Is you go that Digital Homestead Act, all of the value that all of these pharma companies and so forth are extracting.
Mm-hmm.
Like these companies are extracting all of the data, training on it, feeding, pharma back into the cows, training on that. And every time they feed new drugs back in, you're paying for it as a rancher.
Wow.
So it's like you're taking my data and then giving me drugs to feed in and using my cows as guinea pigs, only for me to pay you to do that again and again.
Yeah.
So now what happens is when you get these ear tags on, now all of the data, it's happening on the chip itself, on-prem. So now that never needs to hit a cloud. That farmer's cloud is the cows. If I want to query the database, I query the cows, not the database up in a cloud.
Cool. That is cool.
And so now what happens is the farmer owns all of that data. And what we do is we propose to this going, hey, we got a Digital Homestead Act. You want to split 50-50 all of the proceeds that we sell to Merck, to Zoetis for all of this impeccable data that they can never access because they've never had physiological data before. Mm-hmm. So now all of the discoveries, all of the nuances in bad data will no longer be. And now you can protein fold your way to discoveries in half the time and a fraction of the time.
You know what? I could probably talk to you for hours, which I have before. What your website, sorry, your blogs is Token Wisdom on the internet. Is that right?
Yeah. Tokenwisdom.ghost.io. I am taking it off of ghost.io and moving it to GitHub. Nowadays you can host everything yourself and do everything yourself. And so I thought, why do any of that stuff anymore? So, in the spirit of, hey, I can do anything. Yeah. I'm starting to do that myself. So, a lot of the things is the Token Wisdom is one, and then CacheCOW.io is for CacheCOW.
And CacheCOW is CHCHE, not cash as in currency. CHCHE, cow.
Yeah, we're a memory company.
That one is super exciting. I see 10 million reasons why every rancher in Canada will have that down the road. And so we've come to an end. I'm going to say that, AI doesn't replace humans. It replaces humans that refuse to adapt. And the race isn't against machines. It's against compliancy, maybe. And that segues into how your solution controls that data of the ranchers without fearing that other people are going to use that against them. Great talking to you, Cam. I wish you nothing but the great Easter long weekend. I hope you have a great little holiday with your family. And I hope Canada does kill it in some of this AI racing that's going on. And I really appreciate your time today. And thanks for being my guest.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Cheers.
The Sasberry AI Podcast. Today we discuss the AI race with special guest Khayyam Wakil.